Hi, in this video, I'm going to talk about the cache write policies. Cache is nothing but a component or storage where we can store uh, the most frequently used informations, and we can also retrieve the informations from the cache for fast retrieval. So, so for example, we have applications, user applications, and this user application stores uh, user specific information such as first name, last name, address, and all those details. So that user information is always stored in a database, and that applications displays the user information on the web page. So the yeah, so just consider this example here. So see, every time the application has to access all the user information from the database, so it always results in longer read time, because read latency is always higher here, because we have to read this information from the database every time. So instead of reading those informations from the database, we can store those informations in a cache, and then we can always let the applications access this information from the cache, so for faster retrieval, and also it will also improve the performance. So this is all about the cache, and the advantage of using cache. So now let's think about cache write policies. Cache is very useful for read heavy applications. Read heavy applications means it's like always reads the data from the database, but it rarely updates anything on the database. So it's very useful for read heavy applications. But what happens if you want to update anything to the database? Because we also store this information in cache, so how we are going to handle this? Do we have to update the cache first, and or do we have to update the database first? So because of all these confusions, they came up with this three different policies. Let's see about these policies one by one. So we have write through, write around, write back. So in the write through policy, the data is returned into the database and also into the cache at the same time. Synchronously, this operation is to be done. So the write operation has to wait for these two things to finish. So because of this one, so this approach is very helpful if we have an applications where you want to update the database, update the data, but you want to immediately read the data. In that case, you need to have this information in both the places. You need to have this information in database and also in cache. So the advantage in this approach is it ensures fast retrieval, because you already have the recently updated information in the cache. So it will not result in cache miss. So it will always that information is always retrieved from the cache. And the other thing is, if there is something happens to the cache, then it should not be a problem, because the data is already available in a database. So there won't be no data lost here in this approach. The cons in this approach is that write latency is very high, because you have to update the cache first, and also you have to, sorry, not first, you have to update the cache and also database at the same times, and the write operation is always blocked, because we have to wait for these two things to be done. So that is the only disadvantage in this approach. And as I mentioned earlier, this is very useful for an applications that updates the data and immediately reads the data. So in our applications, we already have that user applications, right, where we want to where in our applications we want to update the data and we want to immediately display the data. So we can think about using this approach, write through approach here. Let's move on to the next approach, write around, write policy here. Write around means you are going to update the data store only, and then you are not going to update the cache. So in this way, we can improve the write latency here. Our write latency is very low here, because we are going to update only one place, not both the places. And the only problem with this approach is that when you update the data and you want to immediately read the recently updated data means, then it will result in a cache miss because the data is not at all available in cache. So that application has to read the cache, it will result in cache miss. So it has to read the data from the data store and then get the data, and then it has to persist that information in the cache, and then it will display, it will send this information to the web page. So for read, latency is always low, but the read latency is always higher here for the recently modified data, but even the write latency is low here. So this approach is very useful when you have an applications where you want to update some data but you don't want to immediately read the data. Then we can think about using this approach. So the last approach is like a write back cache policy here. So the data in this approach, the data is written to the cache first, and then that output operation is completed. So and then updating the data to the database will be done asynchronously. So after some time, after some certain period interval, the write operations to the database will be done asynchronously, and actually we are not going to block the write operations at the time. So once you write the data to the data store, that's it, your write operation is done, and then asynchronously it will update the data to the database. So this is a proper approach for both read heavy and write heavy applications here. But only one drawback in this approach is that the data might be lost, because once you update the cache, then you are then you are letting the background process to update the data to the database after some times. But what happens if something happens to the cache and the cache got corrupted means, then you might then the data might be lost. So we don't have any other way to retrieve that lost data anywhere. So yeah, this is the a drawback in this approach. Yeah, based on the use cases we can think about implementing any one of this approach. So yeah, but this write back approach is very useful for both read heavy and write heavy applications. But only one, the drawback is data might be lost. So you have to think about using resiliency or some other concept to avoid this kind of data lost. Yeah, that's it about the video. Please, if you have any comments, please add your comments in this video. Thank you.